Thank you for coming today. I hope everyone is in the perfect condition today. All right, let's move forward to the main event today. We are going to talk about building a resilient team structure, which is, for me, is a very interesting topic because usually when you have a resilient team, then you tend to stay motivated and productive in the company. So I believe this is crucial, especially during this situation nowadays. So presenting this topic, we have right now joining us today an expert in the field. So we are honored to have Caron, the founder of Caron Consulting. Hi, Anne. Maybe you can say hi to everyone and say a few words.
Hello, thank you very much for having me today. I'm really glad to be invited and to be able to share some useful tips with you and answering your questions.
Great. So just for information, Caron is an international speaker. She's also an author and a consultant as well. She has over 10 years of experience as a senior HR executive at Google. Wow. And then she set up her consulting practice in 2015 to support founders in building high-performing and positive organizations. So through her experience working with entrepreneurs, she developed a practical methodology for startups to grow the right organizations and teams for success, which she described all of it in her book, From Zero to 1000, the organizational playbook for startups. Super exciting. So without further ado, this is Caron talking about building resilient team structure. Please, Anne.
All right, so today we'll speak with you and speak about how to build a resilient team structure. I think that most of you are founders or thinking about potentially building a startup. So I will focus a lot of what I'm saying to the context of the startups as well, although it's also applicable to big companies. But speaking about startups, obviously most founders want to build a successful business, but the reality is that 90% of the startups fail. And if you look at the reasons why startups fail, a lot of them, if not all, can be attributed to human errors or leadership failures. So the reality is that companies are made of people, and these people can make or break your company. The quality of your strategies will only be as good as the people developing those strategies or executing those strategies. So taking a good care and understanding that people matter, that it's not just about having a fantastic idea or having the best business plan, that won't necessarily only work. You do need people to execute your business plan. Without the people, your business plan is only just a piece of paper. And that's something that we have discovered somehow in the bad way or the hard way during the pandemic crisis, right? We've seen how difficult it was to manage people and teams and being able to overcome the different difficulties go through it with the teams. And a lot of the companies that actually made it became even stronger through the period. So whether that's companies that managed to pivot and find new ways to generate revenues as their revenues were being impacted by the crisis, or being able to be very human-centric in the way to deal with downsizing, for instance. And Airbnb, for instance, has been a good example, both being able to pivot, I'll speak about that later on, but also in being able to still show care as they had to downsize. Obviously, the travel industry has been quite hit during the crisis, and businesses such as Airbnb have been badly impacted too. So they had to let go staff, but there was a lot that they have done to ensure that the staff being going was taken care of. They have prepared and shared broadly profiles about all the people that they were letting go to ensure that people were able to, that the other employers could be employing them and really marketing them well. And that was greatly appreciated by the staff still within the company, because obviously they were glad to see that their company cared for them and was taking good attention to their well-being and the well-being of even the people leaving the organization. I can speak to you about an example that I lived. It was over 10 years ago when I was at Google. There was the financial crisis in 2009, and the stock price went down quite significantly. And at Google, as a result, we had to freeze the hiring. And at the time, I was leading a team of recruiters in Europe. And globally, we had to let go 50% of our recruiters because we were not hiring anymore, and therefore there was no as much need for recruiters. The thing is that 6 months later, the situation got much better and we had to hire a lot more people in the business. So the business was recovering. We needed to hire a lot of people in the business, but we didn't have enough recruiters to do that. So it was panic mode somehow, and it took us quite some time to be able to recover from that phase. So what were some of the learnings that we had from that time? First is that the cost for us to rehire people, so we let go recruiters. So the first impression could be, okay, we're saving money from their salary, but actually it cost us much more than the money from the salary that we saved, because you need to spend quite some time to rehire. You're also spending money in the trainings, etc. The morale and the productivity is obviously going down. We had to hire recruiters and train recruiters before we were able to hire people in the business. So that was quite a negative on our side. And a lot of time was wasted that we could have invested somewhere else. And that was one of the things that we learned over time. The following years, we actually realized that every year there were at least 2-3 months per year when the hiring was going down. And this time we thought that it was much better to invest this time in training our teams, trying to think about new projects that we could launch, new initiatives like building pipeline for the future in the area of the business where we knew there would be a need in the coming months, or thinking about employee branding initiatives or things like that. And basically, this is resilience. So we learned to be resilient and build resilient team. So what does it mean to be resilient? Being resilient means that we're able to recover from issues that we may face. Why is it important for startups? Well, like any other company, you will face issues, but in the case of a startup, the nature of your business will change quite significantly over time as you grow. Having a company with 10 employees is quite different to having a company with 50, 100, or 1,000. And so you will have a number of different challenges to face each time that you grow. Also, as a founder of a company, your role will need to be evolving as well. Being the founder of a team of 10 is different to being the founder of a company of 50, 100, or 1,000. And finally, as we're experiencing now, crisis cannot be predicted. So we need to build that flexibility in our teams to be able to overcome those crises. So in order to be a successful entrepreneur, you need to build resilience. So how do we do that? So there are 4 key components to resilient teams. The first component, resilient teams are highly collaborative. It means that people trust one another to do a good job, and they know that they need to work together in order to have the best results. And the typical example would be in sports, team sports, right? They need to work as a team in order to be successful. It was some time ago, and it was France against England, and I was in England at that time. I was in a pub full of English people, and I was here the only French person, and France was losing quite terribly. We were losing by 14 points, which in rugby is quite a bit, and we had only 20 minutes left. And it happened. France managed to win the match. I was overjoyed because obviously I was the only French in the pub, and it was like jumping everywhere and showing, yeah, we made it, we won. But the only reason they managed to do that is because they believed that they could do it, and they trust each other's to be making it happen as a team. And so that's very much what needs to happen in an organization. Team members have to trust one another and know that they can rely on each other in order to do the work together. Now, how do you build that? You can build that by encouraging teamwork and project groups into your organization. So besides the day-to-day work and the scope of the role that each of your employees have, try to organize some cross-functional projects, for instance, where they would be working on optimizing processes or new ideas or engagement. I mean, recently with COVID, we had a lot to think about in terms of how to work better from home. You can get your employees to work together and to bond and to build something together, and that will increase that level of collaboration. The second key to building a resilient team is to ensure that everybody is clear about what they're supposed to do, what is their scope of responsibilities, and what is the context. Let's take the example, for instance, of a plane, at an airport when a plane needs to land or to take off. Well, pilots have to be clear what their role is, and the control tower as well. The pilot is okay to make decisions as he wants in order to ensure the security of the passenger during airtime, so when they're flying. But during landing or takeoff time, they need to trust and to know that the decision doesn't rely with them, it relies with the air traffic controller. And so the air traffic controller will tell them when is the time to take off or to land. Why? Is it because it's very busy, because there's some weather, etc., so that they can make the right action where needed. And I think we're all very happy that they're clear, clarity in terms of who's doing what when we're taking the plane. So in order to build a resilient team, you need to ensure that people are clear about what is the game that they're in, what they're here for, and how they can rely on others, what are the part of the business that they need to be waiting for in order to make a call when they need to. So in order to build that, make sure that everybody's clear about what the purpose, why they're here, that they have some type of monitoring tools, such as KPIs, to see if they're doing, they're accomplishing well what they're supposed to be doing, and also provide them some context. That's a lot of the things that might have been missing in this current situation with the pandemic. A lot of founders did not necessarily share the context, how well we were doing. Is the company at risk of not surviving the crisis? Providing this information is critical because people require this information to make the right decision and to act in the best way of the company, of the team. The third thing is to ensure that you can improvise. It's good to be mastering the steps of your job exactly well. But the reality is everything changes all the time within the organization and outside the organization. Again, great example with the pandemic. And one of the good example is Airbnb, for instance, who, as we said, has been suffering quite a bit with the circumstances, with traveling, going down, and so less people were going to use their services. So they had to think about, think out of the box. What are the type of things that we can do? Because our business is not going to run for quite a number of months now. And so they came up with a new idea, which is to run, to have their host to run events like, I'm going to run tequila, how to make tequila, or how to dance rock and roll or whatsoever. That works super well. But can you imagine that you need people to think out of the box for that? So encourage that as much as possible. Encourage new initiatives, new projects, new pilots. Don't wait for the crisis to happen. During a normal time, you can have programs like the famous 20% project at Google, where engineers were spending 20% of their time working on a side project. It's so you don't have to allocate 20% to all your employees, but ensure that they have some time that they can dedicate to thinking out of the box and bringing new ideas of solving issues. And recognize those innovations and new ideas. It doesn't have to work all the time. What is important is that they try and that they come up with new ideas. And that brings me to the fourth point, which is, in order for innovation to work well, you need to ensure that you have psychological safety. Psychological safety is when people are comfortable, feel safe, voicing their opinion, taking risks, potentially failing. Can you imagine perhaps the first person, if we imagine being at Airbnb, perhaps the conversation went, okay, what do we do? And somebody just came up, oh, we can run trainings or we can run events. Probably half of the room were just staring at them as like, well, that has nothing to do with our business. But it builds on something that was super positive and worked super well. Let me give you another example of psychological safety and how it can be very damaging. In a hospital, imagine we have a nurse who sees that one of the patients has probably the wrong dosage for one of the medication that he's having. So that nurse has to go to the doctor and say, well, I think there's an issue here. But she remembers that doctor, last time that she went to him, he was quite annoyed. He was like, yeah, who do you think I am? I know what I'm doing. Stop, wasting my time. So she decides not to say anything. Now, the story doesn't necessarily tell if the patient died or anything, but you can imagine the consequences. The consequences could be fatal for the patient. But even if that was not an issue, just the fact that the nurse doesn't feel comfortable going to the doctor when she sees a potential issue is an issue in itself, because that might not be the patient that has a problem. It could be the next one. So psychological safety is absolutely critical to build in your organization. So ensure that your employees can voice their opinion. They can make mistakes, so they can't repeat the same mistakes, over and over. But once you make a mistake, you can learn from it and then improve upon it. So embrace this, build a culture where being innovative, having new ideas is not necessarily crazy, that we're okay to hear ideas that will not make it through. And it's okay to make mistakes because we're learning from that. And if we're not taking risks, we may actually not move forward. So these are the four things. But once you have, those four elements, you're not all done, because it actually starts from the top. You can't just rely on the team to be resilient. You need managers. Managers are absolutely critical in building those four elements. Managers will be the ones encouraging team members to collaborate, to innovate. They will be the one to installing an environment of safety, etc. And of course, founders are absolutely key to this for several reasons. One, to encourage, to build that culture, but also because as a founder of a startup, there's much more difficulty that will come on the way. It's not just the ad hoc crisis that you cannot be planned. There's also a lot of different challenges that will come through the different cycles of growth of your startup. So building resilience as a founder is very important too. I will go quite fast here just to ensure that we have enough time for the questions. But all I'm saying here is actually described in my book. So if you want to have more details about this, feel free to go and check. But yeah, in order to be a successful entrepreneur, you need to know what your journey is going to be like and to be able to plan for the obstacles and the challenges that come ahead before they hurt your momentum. So what are some of these challenges? The first one is that your startup is like a kid. And so if you treat your kid as a baby until they are teenage or adult, it won't work. It's quite the same for a startup. There are different phases of growth. There are 5 phases of growth of a startup, which are quite different. Very early stage is very easy. Everybody knows each other. Everybody is part of the conversation. Everybody can speak to the founders and go to the founders to ask questions. So it's very much the good old days. It starts to be a little bit more complicated when you reach 30 to 75 employees, because you have hired quite a number of people, and it can start to be a little bit more complicated for people to know exactly what their role are, unless you have taken the time for that. So as a founder, you need to anticipate these phases and ensure that you're bringing some structure and ensure that you have managers to delegate and transition this information to the team. Otherwise, it will be a little bit more chaotic. And between 75 to 200 people, it starts to be way more complicated. You start to have people that are starting to really find it difficult not to have access to the founders, not to get enough information. People don't necessarily know who to go to get information, etc. And those first 200 people will define the rest, the quality of the next 1,000. So getting it right at this point is important because it will define, how the rest of the journey will go. So there are a number of things that needs to be happening during, that you need to build, like building the company culture, setting some basic HR, structure, etc. So ensure that you're preparing for that so that you're not adding more challenges and difficulties to a journey that will anyway be paved with obstacles. The second thing to have a look at is that your role as a founder will be evolving quite significantly as well, because being a manager of 10 people, as I said, is not the same as being a manager of 50 or 100 whatsoever. So you need to move fast, and a lot of the skills that you will be required to get are not necessarily those that you have had before. You don't know what you don't know. You haven't been you haven't had the experience of being a manager of 500 people before. So you need to ensure that you have the ability to learn fast. Basically, there will be 3 roles that you will need to take on. The first one is quite easy. It's the jack of all trades. So you're wearing multiple hats and you have to do everything. You're extremely hands-on, you're extremely resourceful, and you roll up your sleeves and do the stuff. But rather quickly, once you hit 15 people, probably even less, 10 people, you need to become a manager. People need you in order to build resilience themselves. So you need to start to delegate and spend more time speaking with people, encouraging them, supporting them, providing them feedback, etc. And then when the organization is even bigger, you can't be a manager of 50 people. It's not possible. You need to become a business leader. As a business leader, you're the one providing that direction, providing that environment, and ensuring that you have the right managers in the team to be able to run and encourage the teams. As I said, you don't know what you don't know, and it will be difficult to prepare for this journey. So make sure that you're surrounding yourself with a supporting team. Doing it alone, being a founder actually is already a very lonely work. You have pressure from within, you have pressure from the outside as well. So look at people around you that could help you, advisors, finding good advisors or potentially consultants that can help you where you have gaps, where you don't necessarily have the expertise, can be very helpful. Using your fellow founders as well, that can tell you, share tips or tell you that they went through this as well, and share the pain. Investors obviously can be of extremely help. Having a coach could be helpful to accelerate learning as well, and obviously your loved one to ensure that you also can have the support at home. So just to sum up, key takeaways: to be a successful entrepreneur, you do need to have resilience. So encourage collaboration, ensure that everybody's clear about what they're here for, what they're supposed to be doing, encourage them to innovate, to find new ways of solving the problems, and set up an environment of psychological safety when people can make mistakes and they can bring up new ideas, even if they sound super crazy. And the second thing is build resilience as a founder for your company. And for that, you need to plan ahead. So build an organization roadmap with the different things that you have to do in your journey. So at least you can anticipate the challenges and have this resilience for only the unforeseen issues. This is all I have for you today. I will be available for questions now. Thank
you very much. And it's such a great explanation and topic. So for the key takeaways for me is so it's important to have the resilient team, because if you have one, then you are able to recover from issue that you may face. And for startups, definitely problem, issues, challenges that are our best friends, right? So, and like you said before, you don't know what you don't know. So please, for everyone that are wanting to ask questions, please write down your questions in the Q&A chat box. You can type it in Bahasa or English. We will try to cover all of it. And if you want to ask the questions directly to Anne, you can just raise your hand, and then our team will enable you to open your video and audio. Okay, so while we're waiting for the people who raise their hand, there are some questions already in the chat Q&A chat box. So I'm going to ask the first question. It's how about if the team already think about moving on to another company in the middle of crisis instead of surviving, because they think this company is sucks and grass outside is greener than grass inside. It's from Fifi from Surabaya.
Yeah, so that's an issue. That's an issue, and frankly, there's not much that you can do at this point. And that's why I was saying building resilience is something that you build over time. Don't wait for a crisis to say, hey, now we need to be resilient. It's too late. So resilience is something that you build over time. And there is this element of trust that is extremely important. Make sure that people feel that they're achieving something as a group and that they would not be able to do somewhere else. The culture is extremely important. I did 10 years at Google. I know what a good culture looks like. It's not necessarily the beanbags, the free food, etc. This has nothing to do. I saw a lot of startups do this and have free food, etc. It doesn't mean that they had the same culture. No, what matters is that people feel safe. They recognize, they trust the leadership. When the leadership says something that we empower people, they actually can feel it. They recognize it. So it doesn't mean, the most important is to be true to yourself. If naturally you're more of a founder, like for instance, who comes late to meetings, don't put in your values that you're, you like punctuality, because you won't be able to, they won't recognize that in the company. So be true to yourself and ensure that people are taken care of, that you have good managers. I told that in the presentation, but managers will play a very key role also in ensuring that people feel safe.
All right. Okay, so the key is the culture, to make them feel safe and to make them feel that they are actually achieving something within the company, right? Okay, so Fifi, do you think this is answering your question already, or do you have a follow-up questions? You can raise your hand or type in the box. All right. Yeah.
Actually add to that, because it's a question that often comes, like, especially the grass is greener. It's usually also, oh, they can pay more. I can get more money. And that often comes. But frankly, if people stay with you for the money, it's not a good indication. First, because that's not where you want people to be motivated, what you want people to be motivated for. You want them to be feeling that they are fulfilled with what they do, that it matters, that they're doing something greater than just filling up papers or whatever the job is, or coding, whatsoever. So the end goal is very important. They're contributing to that. I mean, Gojek has been extremely good at that. There was something bigger. It was not just about, doing the logistics of all the bikes. It was, really getting something greater for Indonesia. So that's the first. The second is, if people are here for the money, you will never win, because you will always find someone that can pay more than you. Even Google can find people, paying more than. So don't trust. The money will never be the answer, as long as you pay them fairly, of course, right? They need to pay the bills.
All right, great. Thank you. And then we're going to move to the next questions. So this is, she has 2 questions. It's from Arifah. So we are non-profit, and due to funding, our operation solely depends on volunteer. So the first question would be, could you share strategy on how to manage and navigate human resources that has limited time for the organization and that lacks of experience, since we are unable to acquire experience, human resource, because we're just offering unpaid volunteerism only.
Yeah, so that's a real challenge. Managing volunteers, and especially when they're just part-time, is very complicated. And that's where creating that win-win situation is even more important. So you need to ensure that they're getting something out of the time that they spend with you. So it has to be purposeful for them. They need to feel that it's not about the money, it's about what they're achieving, the impact that they have, and feel good about that. There are a lot of things, there are a lot of businesses that run on volunteering work. If you have a look at Wikipedia, for instance, it's being filled by teachers, or people don't get paid to write the content. They're doing it because they care for it and they feel that it's important. They're contributing to something bigger than them. Linux as well as a coding platform, So there are a lot of things that are being done that people do for free. I mean, even if you think about when you're learning the guitar, right? You're putting a lot of work into it, and you're not getting anything out of it, really, except the pleasure of doing something good. And so that's what you need to be working on. So what are the aspects of the job or of your company that people can get, really feel that they're contributing? So it could be, You could communicate about the people and doing some posters regularly online saying, hey, this person has been contributing, so they will feel the worth. So these are, easy things to do.
Right. So we need to acknowledge them when they achieve something or when do something great, right? Yeah.
That could be, I mean, everybody is different as well, but some people will love the opportunity to learn and to grow. So getting some trainings or working with somebody more senior that could be their mentor for other stuff. It depends, but make sure that they're getting something in return.
All right. Great. And the second question from the same, Arifa. So diversity is the core of a good team. And in our experience, if the team only consists of all Indonesian, the team is going to be quite passive. But somehow it is not an option for us to recruit a non-Indonesian background team. So how to build and engage an active team when we cannot acquire diversity background?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I mean, there is a cultural element in this. I've been working in Asia now for 8 years. It's true. Culturally, Asia is not as proactive and innovative in nature than the Silicon Valley. But I'm really convinced that it will happen. It's just a matter of time. And the good thing with COVID is that it has accelerated this transition that will have to happen. Now we're seeing people working from home, like companies that were really resistant to getting people working from home. They have to do that. So they're empowering more individuals. Individuals are getting used to it as well. They realize that they can do a bit more. So yes, that's, it's coming. There is a cultural reality that you have to deal with, but it doesn't mean that it's stuck forever. Now, how to do? There are a lot of material online, whether that's TED Talks or whatsoever, where you can encourage and inspire people. You can have them to read. Then I spoke about the different projects. Little by little, encourage them to see that they actually take pleasure in accomplishing tasks that they set to themselves. It's not their manager that told them to do it. They saw a gap and they said, oh, it would be good to do that. Okay, go ahead. I trust you. Even if it doesn't work, just the fact that you spotted the gap and that you're trying to find a solution is great. So I encourage that as much as possible. And the last thing is, diversity is not just nationality based. There's a lot of things. So in Indonesia, you have already quite a diversity. So use this. Ensure that you have diverse teams in terms of gender, background, etc. Because diversity is what fosters innovation and creativity. Because you have different ideas that come from different places. So if you don't have the nationality diversity, get all the other ones.
Right. So, well, from my experience as well, if that happened, maybe we can, like you said, maybe we can just give them a new projects that can challenge them to actually be more active and, initiative. So, and then whether or not the project like very successful or just like, so that we can have to give them like acknowledgement so they can build their own confidence from time to time. Right?
I think I totally agree with you. One thing that I would advise to do is not to allocate a project to them, but to encourage them to find the project.
Right.
For my teams, that's what I would. So every single team member in my teams have a project, and they had to find it. And that's where, again, the role of a manager is extremely important. Speak with them, try to understand what they're good at, and also where their interests lie. Some people will be really interested in, the process, how the process, work, etc., and they will see that it could be improved by just, changing a few steps or whatsoever. Okay. Some others will be much better at collaborating and creating the bridges with the teams. So try to help them identify what naturally they're interested in and they're good at, and just direct them, help them find it, find that idea that they're excited about. And just the fact that they find it, it's already half done, because it won't be work. It will be just naturally what they would love to do.
Great, great. Okay, we have another question from Okta Ramayana. So what is your take on leaders issue, which is imposter syndrome? What are the patterns and how to overcome it? You know, when there are things that we're not good enough, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what, two things is the importance of a manager. So that's what a manager should be helping you overcome, helping you, telling you when you're doing good. So positive feedback is often forgotten. We tend to give feedback. Well, first, we tend not to like to give feedback because it never feels good to say, to people, oh, you could do better here or you could do better there. But also, a lot of feedback is usually negative or constructive. We forget to give positive feedback. If you want somebody to be confident, but also to keep doing all the good that they're doing, you need to tell them that this is actually good so that they keep doing it, or else it feels good. Oh, that's the thing that she likes. Okay, we keep pointing what not to do. Let's just keep doing this and we're going to get more of it. So that's one thing. The second is surround yourself. If you don't have a manager, in the case of founders, for instance, surround yourself with other people. Get a close, supporting team, as I said earlier, of peers who you can speak with, get feedback from, etc. But the imposter syndrome is natural. A huge part of the population have that. I have that. Everybody does it. So realize, putting a name on it is already one thing, and then taking pleasure.
All right. Cool. For the next one, it's from Fifi again. So maybe it's a follow-up question. So, is it important that company should has an ideal leader? So we're talking about leader again. Is it like, like the leader that charismatic and so every words that he or she can be trusted by the subordinate?
So, sorry, what's the question? Sorry.
So is it important to have an ideal leader, like an idol that like looks like perfect and charismatic, and so that you can trust their words? Yeah.
Yes and no. Yes, as a mentor, somebody that you can learn from, but don't forget that you are you. And the only way to be a good leader is to be an authentic leader. So be honest with yourself. If you're naturally not necessarily outspoken or extrovert, don't look at people who are super extrovert and keep doing things, because you may try to do it, but at the end of the day, it will cost you quite a lot, and you will only get as good as the average. So focus on your strengths. Who are you? What are the things that really make you a good human? And that's how you're going to be a good manager to your team. Be authentic. Don't try to be somebody else, otherwise you won't gain anybody's trust.
Right. Okay, so in relation of this, there's like another questions. So like some people usually like quite friendly and likes to be friend with their colleagues, or even their subordinates or even their leaders. So how to ensure the proper lines between friends who turn to business partners, or like quite close friends within the same company? Because when they're your friends, you tend to be less disciplined on coming to meeting, because these people, my friends, like I can just like come and go as I please. Let's say it's like that.
Yeah, that's true, and I think it's something that is extremely hard when you become a manager for the first time, because sometimes you might even become the manager to your previous colleagues, and that's complicated. And also, as I said, you don't want to appear as a bad person. if you're a parent, if you're a mother or a father, think about management as being a parent. When you're scolding your kids because they're coming too close from the fire, or because they're taking a knife, or because they're hitting another kid, you still love them. And what you're telling them is for their own good. So make sure that the people that report to you, or even your colleagues, or even your manager, that when you're sharing feedback, it's always for their own good. Always be generous when providing a feedback. A feedback is a gift. So phrase it in a way that is positive or positive. Now, I don't really like the hamburger thing, like you say good thing, then you say a bad thing, and then good thing, because the message usually gets a little bit lost in the way. So just be clear, but bring it from your perspective. It's like, okay, when you do that, this is how I feel, or this is how people feel, or that this is how it looks like. So perhaps be careful, because you might not realize it. You might not do it on purpose, but this is it. And so be mindful when you're communicating. And the second thing is be clear. I mean, have this conversation. If you're becoming a manager to your previous colleagues, just say, okay, the boundaries, now I'm in a new role. So sometimes we will have a hard conversation, and we need to be okay with that, and to be able to draw the line. Once I have told you what I need to tell you, then I'm happy to go for a drink, because I still love you. You're not my kid, but that doesn't mean anything. So I think try to get, if you forget about that, try to think about the parent, your parent, or you as a parent to your kid.
All right. And your answer is also answering the next question. Also, it's the same, relatively the same. So we're going to proceed to the next question. From Linida Oktora, or Rinta. As a team member or follower with a leader who doesn't have a clear vision and mission, the follower is confused about what to do. Even though from what I read about top management leadership is very important to build and communicate a vision for continuous improvement, so that the organization can improve. So how to solve this problem when your leader doesn't have a clear vision and mission?
It's complicated, frankly. I mean, that's the job of a leader, so it's difficult to do his job. The only thing you can do is to provide that feedback, or to ask questions that will help him or her articulate that vision, that context. But yeah, no, that's really the job of a leader, and that's what I was saying about how the role of a founder has to evolve over time. A lot of founders, but also managers, find it very hard to move to the next level. So it can be very reassuring and comforting to be doing stuff, to be executing, to be hands-on. But from the moment you become a manager, let alone a leader, you need to delegate. You need to let people do what they're supposed to be doing. Don't go and do for them. Your role becomes to take care of the team, to ensure that they are equipped, that they have all the information, the tools, etc., to be doing a good job. And so most of the time of a manager, the more senior you are as a manager, the more time will be spent in meetings, constructive meetings, right? Not just update of meetings where nothing happens really, but your job is to be with your team, to have one-to-ones with your team, to ensure that they're clear about what they're supposed to be doing, that they have feedback, etc., and to speak also with other managers to make decisions, etc., and get more clarity, get the vision. So yeah, I'm sorry, it's not really the only thing I see. If your manager is not providing you with this information, is to search for it from him, and him or her again, and provide some type of feedback.
Right. It's because usually when you become the middle manager, then you need to answer for your team, but you need to accommodate for your managers as well. I mean, like your supervisor as well. So it becomes really tough when the direction is not clear. So
it is, but as a middle, when you're in between, your role is not just to pass on information. You also need to make a role for yourself. Right. So search for information. If you don't have it, it's probably findable. And otherwise, try to help your teams as much as you can with the lack of information. We don't have all information, especially in the startups. I mean, a lot of startups move as a business without having all information about the market or finance or whatsoever. So you also need to. That's the integral part of the manager role, to be able to make decisions with little information. Sometimes
with limited information. Okay, right. So the next question would be, okay, it's from Anonymous. So how to find an opportunity in this tough situation to grow the team, like the COVID-19 situation right now?
So to me, that's going to be quite, weird in view of the context. But actually, I think that's the best opportunity ever to grow. When you're in context like that, you're given an opportunity to think out of the box and to reallocate your time. So that's basically what I was saying about in my example about Google. When you're in downtime, try to think about where can I invest my time elsewhere. So you can train, you can think about new projects, you can think about collaboration with other teams. There's a lot that you can do, and I think that times like that, as long as it's not too constraining financially, obviously, but these are the times. There's the slow and low time of activity should be time that you invest in self-introspection. Who am I? Right. What exactly do I want to do? What am I good at? What else can I learn? And also exploration outside. So what about the other people? What do they do within the organization, the other teams, the other companies? How do they tackle this? What type of strategy do they have on the market? What type of products do they offer to their clients, etc.? So it's actually extremely rich period for growing.
Yeah, I see. Great. So this is actually the time to grow the team, right, during this crisis.
Because you have time. It's just that you have time to do the things that usually you don't have time to do because you're so busy with the daily activities.
Right. So, okay, the next question. Do you need people with specific characters to build a resilient team? And if yes, what are the specific characters required?
Well, so I would say that it's easier if you have team members that are interested in doing a bit more than what they're asked to do. So when it's much harder to build a resilient team of let's just take an example, a customer service team where everybody is just answering the questions and they're like, okay, that's the job I've been given. These are the questions I need to answer, and I have an answer for each of the questions. That's not very helpful. So having people that want to stick to just their scope of the job will not work. But you can encourage that because it never works. I mean, we are now in an era where we have knowledge-related jobs. We need people to think. It's not like it was in the past century, during industrialization, when we had people at the assembly line. It was okay. They just had to move, it's like Charlie Chaplin movie, right? They keep doing the same piece over and the same movement over and over. That's not, I mean, there are almost no jobs in our current, startups or that are like that, very little. Blue collar jobs are very few. So it's mostly services and knowledge related. In that case, you need people to think. And in that case, it's just, you can't provide them instructions for every single situation. And the more you do that, the more you actually infantilize them and encourage them not to think. So my recommendation is to try to give them as little instructions as possible, but what they need is, what is the nature of the problem? And what are the tools that I can use? How am I equipped?
Okay, great.
I mean, the nature of the problem and the objective, right? So
what
is the end goal that we're trying to reach? So if it's a customer service, the ultimate goal is to have happy customers. And so then you identify the issue and you need to find a solution that will resolve it from the customer perspective.
All right. So since our time is almost up, so I'm going to read the last question. This is from Mardianto Dian. The question will be how to be assertive in the team and not hurt the team's feeling at the same time. So maybe when you become, you have a standing like to your team, like you want to say something, you want to give feedback, but quite, or to remind them, but you don't want to hurt the feelings of your team, right?
Yeah. So I mean, there's a technique. I mean, you can read that on a number of different pages on Google or elsewhere. But there are a number of tips on how to provide feedback. The main thing is, prepare. That's something that you need to technique that you need to learn. So write the script to ensure that you're using the right words. Always place yourself from your perspective. It's not about saying what you do is bad. Like, what you do made me feel that I'm worth nothing, or that I'm lost, or whatever. But you give your perspective, and that's, in that way, it becomes really a gift. It's like, you might not see it, and I trust it. I don't think you're doing it for the pleasure of being bad. But sometimes we just don't see, and it can be so powerful. It's to get people who can tell you. I always like the example, sometimes when we have something in our teeth for the whole day, and then you go back home and you realize, oh no, you're like, oh my God, I've been doing this presentation the whole day with my thing in my teeth. And then you're like, how come even my friends haven't told me? And so think about that. Think about how you would feel if everybody could see that you have something in your teeth, but you were not voicing it. So yeah, think about that, and how would you say that nicely, politely, not in front of everyone. It's you just do that carefully.
All right, so it's important to not to blame that person, but try to looking for the solution of the issue. All right, great. So this is the end of our Q&A session. Thank you everyone who asked the questions, and I would like to ask Ain to give the a few words before we close this session.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me, and thank you for your questions. All very good questions. I think they were very complimentary to the presentation I made. So yeah, thank you. Well, I would say the first thing is have fun at work. That's the most important thing. That will make you much better. And the happier you are at work, the lighter you feel, and the better you are. And that's the virtuous circle. So try to find the positive in your job and concentrate on that. If you can't find enough positive in your job, it might not be the right job for you, and that's okay. It means that you're just not at the right place, and that might explain some of the feelings that you may have.
All right. Thank you very much, and for your time today and your for knowledge sharing today. It's very insightful, and for me personally as well, it really teach me a lot how to manage a team, how to handle a team, and definitely I read a little bit of your book, the 0 to 1000. So I guess like if every one of you wants to learn more on the strategy, human resources strategy for each stages of startup, you can check out check it out, the book 0 to 1000, the organizational playbook for a startup.